Hey guys, welcome to episode number 7 of Let's Book Talk. Today we're speaking with Elsie McKenney, the author of Eve's Covering. I can't wait for you guys to listen to this episode because the fact that this story was taken from a real life experience, it just makes everything so much more interesting, so much more real, obviously. But yeah, I honestly don't want to delay any further because this was one of my favorite conversations so far. So I hope you guys enjoy. And, well, here you go. So yeah, before we get into the book, I did want to ask you where your passion for storytelling started. Did it start from an early age, or did that kind of develop as you grew up?
Yes, at a very early age. It actually started with the love of reading. My sister, who is 10 years older than, actually 11 years older than myself, she used to read to me, and then we'd tell stories, and then she wrote down my stories. And she recently passed away. So
Mm.
before she got to read my book, so,
Uh,
which is sad.
yeah. I feel like, and this is from talking to a few authors as well, it seems like that penchant for storytelling always starts, within the family in one way, shape,
Hmm.
or form. Um, I haven't talked to too many people where it started, in another environment. So that, you know, from that point on, what were some of your inspirations in terms of not only the books that you liked reading, but also what you like to write?
Well, because of reading, though,
Mm,
I started to love animals and horses,
mm,
especially. Like I read all of Walter Farley's books, and then, of course, I wrote about horses, and I always wanted a horse. And so I wrote the horse into my life in Eve's Covering. I worked at a horse farm, but I never was able to have one. And so I like to call what I wrote autofiction because it's autobiography, but
mm,
it's fictionalized to make my life, like to make the story like something that I could cherish,
yeah,
and make it, I think, better. And sometimes the bad parts worse, and the better parts better.
sure. Yeah, and that's one thing that I guess we could just dive into the book now is I loved how one, the pacing of the story I thought was fantastic because even
Thank
from the
you.
first page, I was hooked like immediately. Um, so when you're writing the book, how did it feel to, sort of relive those moments that happen in your actual life and then fictionalize it in a way where it's an entertaining story, but still rooted in that reality? What was that process like?
The process started, I wrote my story down out of necessity.
Mm,
I had terrible nightmares for years. I want to say like 10 years from just the traumatic experience that I had.
hmm.
And the cult leaders were always like coming at me. And even when I had children, in my dream, they would kidnap my children. And I'd always be chasing them, finding them. So that's one part of the book. I don't want to give too much away,
Hmm.
where the little girl, though, that I rescue
Yeah.
really is, she symbolizes my daughter that I rescued every night in my dream, you
Yeah.
know. So I started as a memoir. Really, I tried writing it down as it happened, but it was so hard to write everything. And so, well, and then my daughter, I let her read it. She was my cheerleader because
Hmm.
before that I was so hard to share with everybody. But it was so funny when she read it the first time, like, well, it took me 25 years to write. I wrote 10, I want to say 10 drafts. But
Hmm.
she got that first one that I thought, you know what, this is something that I can maybe publish. Like, it's a
Yeah.
story. she's like, okay, the first four chapters, boring, just nix those. Only a daughter can tell you that. She's like,
Yeah.
start here. And what are their motivations? You guys all just act like crazy people. So, because that's what my life, the turmoil that you feel in Eve as you're reading, it was my turmoil.
Hmm.
And I was able through this story, I had to sit back and go, why did these people come into our lives? Why did they pick us to move in and control? It wasn't, well, it might have somewhat been money, but we were not wealthy people. So, I mean, they took a lot of our money, but
Hmm.
was it, was it, I don't know. So I had to step back and give them motives. So
Right.
one was, and now my mind is going, so you're
No
gonna have to
worries.
keep this out. There were a lot of like storylines.
Yeah.
My book was so wandering that I had to cut some out, and it's going to be in my next book, the sequel,
Hmm.
where Simon, I think he was in the mafia too by what he acted like. So that I had to just cut that storyline out because there was just too much to put
Hmm.
in there. So my process. So it was a
Yeah.
memoir. And then I just started weaving. And that's kind of like how I write. I get the outline. That's like basically now on my sequel. I have the outline and I have a good story, but now I start to weave in more like, mysteries. And I
Hmm.
go back and I'll write in like 10 different times
Yeah.
until there are like 10 subplots in it. And so
Yeah.
that's kind of how like I'll be like, oh, this character, there needs to be a character. And just like Auntie really
Hmm.
is a symbol because I don't have it. Well, I have two other aunties, but also it being inspired by my life, I couldn't always use like I might get in trouble from people if I kind of disguised things in a
Right.
way and symbols. And so, Auntie, because my beta readers did not believe that our family could be so easily pulled out of like the Mennonite church, we were in the Mennonite church. I was raised that way. And these people, I want to say within a matter of a year, like, had secluded us, had
Hmm.
we were out of the church, our family, our friends, and we followed them. Like,
Hmm.
I don't know if you've ever heard of Jim Jones. He
Yeah.
was and they committed suicide because they followed him. I'm just so glad
Hmm.
we, because I can see that
Yeah.
that would have happened. Like, okay, like you heard from God and we've got to follow you. And so I
Right.
tried to put that feeling into my story. I crammed it all in. Like my family became entangled really when I was 10.
Hmm.
So, and there's a whole backstory there that I didn't even put in.
Yeah.
It's just crazy. So that inspired like the second part of my book too.
Hmm.
So, and when I followed them, and a lot of like the weird supernatural things actually did happen. People are like, well, they talked about curses, and I wanted to go to college, and they told me that I was going to be cursed if I go to college.
Hmm.
Someone awful, uh, is going to come into my life, and I'll be cursed.
Yeah.
And oh, that I should follow that. Okay, so
Hmm.
long story short, that is what happened. So I was with them for a year, and I lost my train of thought again.
Oh, no, no, no. You're fine. You're
I
totally fine.
I'm so excited, but I'm a little nervous. So like my mind is like, woo.
You're all good. All good.
Oh, okay,
Um,
okay.
yeah, but kind of going on that same line, there is that fear that Eve feels of, okay, but if everything that's happening is actually real,
Yes.
Like, how does that affect me? How does that affect my relationship with God? And that's what I wanted to ask you. How
Uh-huh.
important was it to, not only from your own experience, but for the story, have that struggle in there of, because even when I was reading, I was like, yeah, if that, like, from just a spectator's point of view,
Uh-huh.
that looks like that actually just happened, you know?
Yeah, it did, because I struggled with that all the time. Like I said, from when I was 10,
Hmm.
it was like, okay, because I was so happy in the Mennonite church, the Mennonite faith. I have tears now just thinking about that.
Hmm.
And then, I talk about in my author's note how I knew at one point that the devil was on my doorstep. But you know what? That happened, that epiphany was right before I ended up joining them and going with them. That was snuffed out because of, like, they just descended upon me.
Yeah.
Like, oh, well, you are like awful. At one point, they told me I was possessed and they prayed over me and all that. And so I, there's only really one person, and that was Devin. And Devin was a real person. And, but they got rid of him. Like, Devin and the love story in there is really two people. And they both had the same exact name except it was really weird. So
Yeah.
it's but for the sake of the story, because I just like, for writing a story, a romance novel, you can't just have the love of your life like fail at rescuing you.
Right.
So
Right.
so I added the ending part because my husband came in at the very end after I escaped, and he basically, like, helped me pick up the pieces of my life, and I felt like such a failure, and just like helped me like through all that and the nightmares, and he supported me in my writing and all that.
Hmm.
And so yeah, that part, yeah, a lot of the where Devin was standing up to the Blackwells and he came to dinner, that all happened.
Wow.
And all the weird
Wow.
stuff, the ooze on the wall, I did not see it, but the um Marigold, the cult
Right.
leader, like Simon and Marigold, she saw strange things, and she claimed to see. I think she saw something. I'm not sure what it was, but I don't
Hmm.
know if it was spiritual or she had some kind of psychotic thing going on. I
Right.
never know. In
Yeah.
the end, really, too, they're live. They're gone now. So it ended like I put in my book.
Mm. That ending, which again, I don't want to give anything away in terms
Right.
of like that entire roller coaster of events that led to the ending of the book. But one thing I did want to ask was about, you talked about your own dealings with the Blackwells in the story, through Eve and everything that they had put you through, but you also get the perspective of the grip that they had on your family as well,
Mm-hmm.
and how you saw that descent into, the clutches of the cult, so to speak. Um, what was it like writing that part of the story? Because, it's one thing to write what happened to you, but when you are watching it happen to your family and feeling helpless, and you're going to them
Mm-hmm.
saying, you know, guys, snap out of it, help me, and then like, no, you have to follow what they're telling you, you know?
Mm-hmm. That was really, really difficult. And my parents had passed away at the point where I was really writing that part. So I
Mm,
felt freer because they never, ever really like saw and admitted that it was a cult. They
mm,
were they were just very gullible, sweet people that trusted. I mean, the Blackwells were their dearest friends,
yeah.
and they ended up being their worst enemies too.
Hmm.
And yeah. So yeah, the personalities of my parents, I wrote them. I felt free to do that because of that they had they had passed away, and because
Mm.
I would feel funny having them read like themselves
Sure.
in a book. And
Yeah.
my little brother Royal, he was younger and he did not consciously, I think, know all that was going on.
Hmm.
So,
Yeah, that's got to be such a, not only just a crazy thing to witness and be a part of, but then again, when you're reliving the moments, and I'm sure you felt as you were writing the story, like what else could I have done, to
yes,
right?
yes, that's what helped me in my story. Actually, I changed the story. I was able to write the all the angst and all. I was looking for answers as to what really happened,
Hmm.
why they were doing this, and like the human trafficking, because people I knew had disappeared. I put that in because I am almost sure of it, but I can't say. I was looking for answers, and so and sometimes I would just cry, like
Mm.
through it. And it was a catharsis because I knew in my, like, I had control now of the pen. I could make
Hmm.
something really, really bad happen. And then I, you know what? He's going to get out of it. They're coming because that's the way it was
Yeah.
in in my house. Like I didn't want to come home from school because something I knew every day there was something horrible gonna, and if there wasn't, I was like, okay, I was just waiting.
Right.
So I wanted to show that angst, but then I was able to finish my story and write a happy ending, a happily ever after. And I gave it to my daughter, and for like the ending that I had at first, she's like, it's not happy enough. She's like, I don't like it.
Mm.
She's like, because I've left it kind of creepy and like, oh, because for my sequel, she's like, no, 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 no. You have put people, they have they have come with you for over 500 pages. You need
Yeah.
to give them a happy ending. And so where it ends, kind of like the Garden of Eden because of
Sure.
Eve. So I put that in there, that reference that is like peaceful and pure, you know. So, and
Yeah.
I got shivers.
I'm so glad you brought that up because getting to that happy ending, every time it felt like things were starting to move in the right direction, there was a roadblock.
Hmm.
Every time you thought Eve was gonna escape, and I thought for a second, like, oh, she's actually gonna be able to leave. She's gonna go with Devin. You're gonna figure it out. And then, wait, who's that? Driving in the distance and showing up, and then you're like, oh my goodness. So, what was that like? Where you're kind of directing the reader through this maze of, you know,
Hmm.
okay, I'm gonna give you a feeling of resolution for 5 seconds until I just pull you right back and we're back to point A. What was that? One, what was your goal with that? And two, um, did you feel like you accomplished what you wanted to, writing those parts that way?
I did, because that was my life for
Mm,
like the 10 years. And I wanted people to feel that because I would feel so hopeful. And most of the time it's when the Blackwells left. Like they
hmm.
would get angry about something, they'd leave, and I'd be like, I would just set up my life again. Like I met Devin and I was happy. And then I'd come home and they were there. Like that,
Hmm.
I mean, they had promised to leave,
Yeah,
and we're never gonna, and then they were back. Like,
yeah.
I mean, we traveled with them when I was a kid. We sold everything. We went in a motorhome and we traveled America and Canada. And then, long story short, they ended up leaving us with no money in California.
Mm,
And so my dad had to get a job. He was a carpenter. So he got a job helping to build a church so we could get enough money for gas to get back to Michigan.
Mm-hmm.
And that is when my dad met this. I don't know who he was, but he liked my dad. He hired him. He gave him, like, we had a house. He gave us a house in Harbor Springs, like, to rent free. My dad fixed it up. So that's kind of why I like symbolize like auntie, because we should not have been like in that bed and breakfast. We just, I just arrived in Harbor Springs, like, hello, here I am.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Yeah.
and so, yeah, so that's what happened there.
Wow. And I feel like what you mentioned about, you every time they would leave, you felt like, okay, things can settle down. But then when you would come back home and you would see they were there, it was that feeling of dread again.
Mhm,
And I know just on a daily basis for people that, might live with people that they necessarily don't like, that's one thing. But when you're with people that are actively trying to ruin your family, that is something
mhm,
completely different. Um, and I don't even know, like, how you can when somebody has, you know, their nails into you that deep and for that long, how did you even, hold on to any sort of hope? I feel like that might have been hard to just kind of trust like things will get better. I have faith that they will. But,
mhm,
year after
mhm.
year, when you think they would and then they wouldn't, like, how was that for you?
That was really hard, but and I am amazed and I just thank God every day. I mean, it's my faith and I am
Hmm.
so thankful that I still have my faith as God walked me through it. I don't know why he allowed that to happen, but yeah, it's just a
Yeah.
miracle. And I I wanted people to see that.
Yeah.
And really, when I was in the Mennonite church, they had this Bible memory program. And
Hmm.
when I was 10, like between 8 and 10, I memorized 300 Bible verses. And so I had Eve, if she was in a Bible memory, like Bible quiz show,
Yeah.
because I'm like, how, see my beta readers, they were like, does this girl like have any inkling of scripture or like have all these thoughts? How does she know these things? She wouldn't know those.
Right.
And so that's why I put that in, because again, my the other beta readers were like, no, 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 she could not have. And I don't know how it happened. I believe like Eve's covering, that's part of it. I believe it was God's covering of protection on me.
Hmm.
So, and then the covering of her, the Mennonites and Amish wear the covering.
Yeah.
And then there's also the covering of darkness that the Blackwells really were. They said that I was covered in darkness, but it was their, you know, it was the cult.
Yeah.
But it was God's protection, because I mean, I felt some really, really strange things. Like I said, I don't know everything. Like I have never seen any ghosts. So just,
Hmm.
but
Yeah.
that also symbolized all the like the anxiety of the
Sure.
spiritual weirdness, like that they would talk about. And like I was in this, because I traveled with them and we would stay with people.
Yeah.
And like at one, there's more characters to come. There's this that I couldn't get everything in this book. Like
Yeah.
I mentioned the Green Witch. Well, she's going to be in the next book, and that really had some like weird. It might be supernatural again. So, and they also played my. So,
Mm.
like I think personally, and I know there is supernatural stuff out there, but I think he was a con man, and I think he played mind games to control people. Just like
Yeah.
he said he had his angels. Well, in actuality, I tamed that down. I said he had angels. He told us he had imps. So that those are the devil's
Mm.
angels
Hmm.
that would follow us around and listen and keep tabs on us. So I like just recently, I'm like, you know what? I bet he bugged our house, like, and said all those
Yeah.
things, like. But
Right.
I don't know. Like, yeah. And so
Yeah.
yeah. So then I was like, okay, they have these powers because they knew everything
Yeah.
that we talked about.
Yeah, yeah. And at that point, what other conclusion can you come to?
Yeah.
Like other than that, I mean, obviously if this would have happened, in 2024, then you could say easily, oh yeah, I wonder if they bugged with the Alexa
Right.
or the Echo or one of these,
Oh, yeah.
things. That would have
But this
been
was
right,
84, 85. Like,
right.
we, right. When I went with them, I had no phone. They easily kept me from my parents. Like, and then they got my mom and dad. Really, they went to Florida to, and they ended up joining another cult down there. Oh, it
Oh,
was so horrible. Like, I, yeah,
yeah.
I wanted to scream.
Oh, I can imagine. I can imagine. Another character that I did want to bring up was the character of Cal. Was he based on an actual person, or was he another sort of amalgamation of people that you ran into?
He was a group of people,
Okay.
um, quite a few different people. On one person, we had uh, a friend in high school. He did get hit by a car,
Mm,
but and he got killed. And so, but he, so that was just um, a little bit of that. Um, but really, yeah, it was part to fill a storyline of the
hmm.
lovers triangle, and
Right.
partly to show the Blackwell's power. And they did, like, they talked about oh, we need to find, like, someone for you. Like, when we were traveling, like, twice, I am, or no, three times, I almost got left somewhere. Like, once in Jamaica, once in Thunder Bay, Ontario, and another place down south somewhere.
Yeah.
And I am just so thankful that the gentleman, like, I don't know what happened, that I did.
Yeah.
I was able to get out of those situations. And so that's kind of where that came in. They were like, we need
Uh,
to find the perfect match for you. And I was like, no, thank you.
yeah, you're like,
No. So
no thanks.
I I finally, like, had another epiphany, and it was um it wasn't like um quite like what I wrote about, but I was fearful for certain people, like his daughter too,
Yeah.
and for my own self. And I was attacked with a knife and threatened, and that's when I bolted. And
Mm,
I had nothing. I had no money. I ran. It was like March in Canada. See, it was really Canada, but I wanted it
hmm.
to be more exciting.
Yeah.
I I've traveled to Armenia and Georgia, the country of Georgia, and I lived in Ukraine for 10 years. And
Hmm.
so that's why I chose, because those countries are just so amazing. And I just wanted the feel, the kind of the surreal feel that I get
Sure.
when I go to foreign places, and that makes the story more, like,
Yeah.
exciting.
Yeah, absolutely. And those moments when you do, in the story, take the internship that they're telling you,
Hmm.
um, that was, when I'd say the roller coaster of events that happen, right when you go there, the story like takes off even further. Um, and of course, I don't want to give anything away there because that's when a lot of stuff
Right.
happens. But I did want to say, the fact that you were able to write that happy ending. When you got to the end of the story, was there a sense of relief, after so many years of trying to get this story completed to a point where you were happy with it? How did that feel for you of saying, I made it, I finished it?
That was so amazing. I'm gonna cry right now. But like, I haven't had any more nightmares. They're
Mm,
gone. So I just think that the feeling of like the Blackwells just lingered with me. And by writing, even like writing through the hard things, I was able to revisit that kind of as someone else. Like I talk about like Eve, like
Hmm.
she's me, but she's not. So I can like live through her and at a safe distance. So I could really dive deep using her. And really, it was me, but I don't know, it was just so much easier just to have that little bit of cushion where I didn't feel like I was ripping my own heart out and
Hmm.
like yeah.
Yeah. Oh my, I can't even imagine, living with this story, both in the actual real life sense and also, as uh, as a book. And then you get to the finish line, and like you said, the nightmare stopped. It's like you faced that demon that had been
Mhm.
following you for so long, which is so great. Um, Now, for you, on the flip side, getting this book published, what hope or what impact do you hope that this book has on people that not only may have gone through something similar, but
Mhm.
others that, just learning that this stuff actually happens, and not only happened then, but I'm sure still happens today.
Oh yeah. And that's part of the reason why I did it because of awareness. Like look out for people. If you see somebody with
Hmm.
the word help on their hand, that's why I said it's kind of like the sound of freedom.
Yeah.
That and because we don't know. And like my life looked fine on the outside, but I just wanted and for a while I thought, well, this is just the way it was. It was normal. But
Hmm.
but if I can help someone get through like the adversity, whether it's like a relationship or a loss or just like there is hope, get through it, find somebody. Like I was so afraid by like at the end where I was homeless for a while, I was afraid like to go find the police station. I was afraid to go to a church. I sat in a bus station for a while, and then in the day I would go to the mall, and I think I was in shock, I think, and I just had to
Hmm.
like process it. And I finally reached out. I reached out to a few people that would not help me. And so I sat for another week, like, but I'm like, what am I going to do? And,
Right.
a few people approached me, like, wanted to help me. And that's what really scared me. And I'm like, I started, pulling out my little notebook, like, whose number do I have? So
Right.
actually, an aunt and uncle that we had, like, kind of shunned from the Mennonite church,
Hmm.
they came and picked me up. They didn't ask
Wow.
anything. They let me stay with them until I got on my feet. And so, yeah.
Wow. It's such an amazing story, honestly. Like, listening to you talk about, the real life stuff that happened, coupled with, the bit of fiction in there, in the story. I mean, it's incredible. Um, and for any aspiring authors, and I know you just sort of spoke to those that may be going through something similar.
Mm-hmm.
What advice would you have to them? Maybe they're in a similar situation of getting a story that they've really wanted to tell for a long time and just haven't gotten to that finish line yet. What advice do you have for them?
I would say do it. Don't wait. Find somebody that you can trust to listen to your story, to help you write it down, to give you feedback. And if you find like it took me a while because at first, the first few people like did not understand my story. It was like, you better be careful who you share that with. Like, kind of like, I was like, oh, like, and I felt something was wrong with me for a while. And so
Mhm.
just don't, don't feel that way. Like, find someone that can help you and get your story out there. It will help somebody. If I can help one person in their stress, realizing that there is hope out there after all of that's over. Like you can get out.
Yeah.
You can get out. It's worth it all. I'll be happy.
Awesome. Well, Elsie, thank you so much for coming on the show today. I really appreciate
You're
it. This
welcome.
was such a great conversation. Before I let you go, if you could tell people where they can find the book, where they can find you online, and any other way they could support you, that'd be great.
Okay. Well, you can support me by buying my book and giving me a review. You can find me. I have a website, elsiemckinney.com. I do most things on TikTok, so follow me there. I have a newsletter I share about my works in progress, my sequel, and a lot more about The Cult Exposed is my blog. Also, I am at this very moment opening a TikTok shop up, and soon I'll have my books out there, so you can find me there.
Awesome. Well, guys, y'all know what to do. Definitely go and buy Eve's Covering, read it, leave Elsie a review. I'll tell you, I started this book on, I believe it was Sunday, and I finished it in 2 days, I think. It was such a fast read because I just needed to know what happened. So yeah, guys, definitely go read it. Follow Elsie on TikTok as well. And I'll have the links to everything she has in the description of the episode. So make sure to check her out, and we'll talk to you guys next week.